Hello and welcome to my channel. So today's video is actually a follow-up video to one that I did a few weeks ago, and the title of it was "So This Is Why We Are Single." I was really proud of the response that I got. It seemed that a lot of people could sort of resonate, maybe not necessarily with the reasons that I listed, but the approach that I took to looking at different things that might have impacted your search for love. But of course, this is the internet, so everyone wasn't pleased with my approach. And something that was pointed out to me again and again was that I didn't include a lot of personal accountability, which means like I didn't consider things that someone might do. I only considered things that someone might have done to them. Now, while I don't agree with that, because I think I did a balance of both, I wanted to provide a different perspective in this video. Now, I want to say this before I get into this video. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with being single. That was something else that was pointed out in the other video. People were like, hey, I'm having a great time, or, you know, we are only concerned about being single because we live in a society that puts way too much emphasis on relationships. One person even said, you don't have to analyze everything. And to that person, I'm like, you don't know me. I do. But I'd also like to say that while there's nothing wrong with being single, and as someone that's been able to claim that status for most of my life, I've been in a lot of conversations where I've been, pushing that point home. I also want to say that I do feel that human beings have a desire to connect and a desire to partner. We have natural sexual desires. We have natural parts of our brain that produce feelings of romanticism. I'm not a neurologist. I am not going to go any further into defining that, but I do know that feelings of romantic love, I believe they are real. And I do believe that some people have a stronger urge to want to express them and to receive them back than other people. And some people are in periods of their life where they're wondering, well, why aren't I able to healthfully and completely express this and get this energy back to me? So while there's nothing wrong with being single, I feel like there's nothing wrong with also not wanting to be single and wanting a partner and wanting to consider why that is not your current reality. So let's get into This Is Why We're Single Personal Accountability Edition. And I do want to say that I re-recorded this video because the first time I felt it was so blamey, and I feel like single people get enough of that. Like when we're out in the world and you don't have a partner, you're not partnered, there is so much criticism and negative talk that is just thrown at you. So much blame. It's your fault. This is why. This is what's wrong with you. And I don't want to create more of that. And I know as a single person, I hate hearing that. So in this video, what I'm going to focus on are things that you may do. And of course, because it's me and I tend to look at how environment does impact behavior, I'm going to look at why you may do these things. And I am going to focus on maybe some tools and some solutions that people can use to stop doing these things. I also want to say this. I'm not an expert. Clearly, my love life is a massive train wreck. But I do feel like I've seen people improve. I've seen people evolve, and as a result end up in partnerships that they may not have been able to be in some time before they tackled certain behaviors. And as a result, a lot of these things that I'm listing are things that I've seen people fix and I've seen their lives change. So long story short, I don't really know what I'm talking about. All of this is a hypothesis, but it's fun for me, and I feel like it's important to be analytical about something you may want to change in your life. So here we go. Okay, in this video, I'm going to be listing things from least relatable, meaning like I don't think everybody would be able to agree with that reason, and it may not resonate with everybody, to the most relatable, which are things that most single people could probably agree that they do that add to their single status. So starting off with least relatable things, you are single because you have low self-esteem and are not ready to be vulnerable with a partner. Okay, so when I say this, I'm talking about those times in your life where you're not really proud of where you are. And so as a result, you're kind of embarrassed to let somebody in fully. So you're only willing to entertain superficial connections. For me, this was college. This was my college experience and my 20s. When I was in college, I had transferred from one area of Texas to another area. And when I transferred, being in a different environment, my skin freaked out. And I had just ridges of cystic acne all over my face. And as a result, in what should have been a really fertile time for me as a young woman, like to get out and to meet people and to make new connections, I shut down. And I refuted, or like didn't want to participate in a lot of conventions of beauty, because I was like, what is the point? I still have this skin. Now, that's not to say I didn't try. Like, I definitely, college was the time where I first went natural. So like always made sure I had a 2-strand twist with like clean braids in the front. I have always been a person who likes clothing, even though I'm not like a fashion plate. Like, I'm never somebody people would be like, she's the best dressed one in here. I'm still a person who does like clothing, and I do like to shop. So I love to follow trends. So I definitely was a 2005 girl with the Ugg boots and the skirts, those like pleated skirts and cowboy boots and whatever else MTV told me I should have on. So I've always been a person that like, I have a good sense of style. But when it came to allowing somebody to be close to me, oh no, I'm not going to do those things. And I also think, not only with my skin, but I think different things that I experienced, you know, in high school, growing up, different ways that people had shown me that they saw me back then, I took that with me into my future. And I had a girl who reached out to me the other day, and she was like, what was something you would say to people who've dealt with being bullied? Because I don't want to have this hurt me in the future. And I was like, girl, if you learn anything from me, please, number one, remove yourself from that environment as soon as possible. And number two, forgive your bullies and realize that they are operating from a limited emotional capacity. What they think of you does not measure to the totality of what you are. And do not take that hurt and that resentment with you into your next chapter, because that's what I did. And as a result, I just took all of these like feelings of insecurity and this low self-esteem with me to my next chapter. And so I avoided situations where someone might find out. They might see my skin. They might find out I'm 20 and I've never had a boyfriend. They might find out that, you know, I talk like this and Black people aren't supposed to talk this way. They might find out that, you know, underneath all these layers, I've got this type of body that I have. They might find out the music I really like to listen to. I was so insecure about so many things. And as a result, I kept myself away from certain connections. And like I said, this also went into my 20s. The recession hit me hard. It was hard for me to get a career. It was hard for me to get a call back for a job. You know, having a television degree and not wanting to go into television was just really, it was a confusing time. And then on top of that, I had gotten sick. And then at one point I was on unemployment. So I had so much shame and just low self-esteem in my 20s that I was literally horrified by the idea of someone getting close to me. So I can definitely say that for me, if you don't have I was low confidence. I knew I could love myself, but I wasn't sure that anybody else would ever be able to love me. How could they? Look at my skin. Look at the horrible low self-esteem. Now, I wasn't always like this. For you people out there who are going to be like, that's why that wasn't always the case, but I can say for a certain part of my life, my self-esteem was way too low. So I didn't want to let anybody into my world. And so as a result, I was like, I want a partner, but I'm more comfortable being single than being out there and trying to invite someone in and trying to get someone to know me. Because what if they find out all of these little secrets that I'm so ashamed of? And I listed a couple of them, but there were more. And so I do think that can be something. You know, you can say that you want to be with somebody, and maybe that's true, but maybe you're not comfortable with your money that you're making. Maybe you're not comfortable with your job. Maybe you're embarrassed about something that's happening in your family. Maybe you're embarrassed about something that's happening with addiction or something else. And you want to make sure that somebody doesn't get too close. Maybe you're still dealing with some depression. Maybe you're, you know, whatever it is, whatever secrets that you are saying, hey, I want to keep this to myself for now. It can be a very, very valid reason for why you are still single. You don't want to let anyone in. And I think the universe responds in kind. So I think that kind of our idea of the types of relationships we want can dictate the types of relationships that we run into. Okay, so if that wasn't relatable to you, that's fine. I understand. That's something that I've recently been thinking about, and I'm like, oh man, that definitely is something that happened with me. So that's why I shared it. So my next reason is actually something that I hate hearing people say. So please know that when I'm saying this, at the same time, I like want to punch myself in the mouth. But the next reason why you could be single, accountability edition, is because you're not trying hard enough. I really, really hate that. And I'll say why. But first I'll explain why it could be keeping you single. So I wanted to talk about this reason because I remembered this tweet. And I think that is absolutely the case. I think there's a time in your life when meeting people is either really easy for you, or it is something that you're just like open to, you have a lot of energy about, you're super optimistic. And then let's say something switches. You leave your college town to go work in a city where you don't know anybody. You have a really bad breakup and it sort of dims your optimism for wanting to go out and find someone. So you just say, oh, I'm not gonna do it. You are in another period of your life where you just don't have the time and the energy to venture out into the world and try and make things happen. And so you get very comfortable kind of staying in your own space and chilling out. And you develop this idea that if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. And you sort of put your romantic life on the back burner. I like this tweet because I think this happens a lot, especially to women as we get older. People as we get older, you know, you got work, you got big boy and big girl, and you got big person responsibilities. So the idea of throwing yourself back out there is just like exhausting and you don't even want to do it. I was thinking the other day, I was like, you know, for me, it's either I sign up for a dating app again, or I don't know, my husband will fall through the ceiling and land in my lap. And if he breaks both my legs, that's fine. We can get married in the emergency room. Like that's how much of a homebody I am right now, because I'm like, ooh, I've been burned. Like I don't want to try. And so I think sometimes that's exactly what happens. Like you had a time in your life and you're really optimistic and you were looking forward to things and you were hopeful. And then maybe things didn't play out the way you wanted them to. And so now it's like, look, if it's meant to be, he'll be my Amazon delivery man. Which I think happens, right? Somebody delivers a package and all of a sudden, you guys are engaged. If that's happened to you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. The other way I think that this tweet is true is that I think about it when I think about people I know that will refuse to try online dating. And while I feel like your personal boundaries are so important and you should never do anything you're not comfortable with, I know people that haven't been on dates in like half of a decade, because they've just been busy with work. They haven't met anybody in person. They haven't been, you know, nothing organic has happened. I do not believe, and I will never believe, that it just happens when you least expect it. Not for everybody. That's why online dating apps were invented. But they're waiting on these meetings to happen in the way that they've decided is okay. And so they've blocked themselves off from it happening any other way. And so when I read this tweet, I was like, ooh, I know some people out there like that. They're like, yeah, if I don't meet them in person, then I'm not signing up for a dating app. So they better, I don't know, come out of the water faucet when I turn on the water in the morning to brush my teeth. They better slither out like a drop of water, because otherwise it ain't gonna happen. Moving on. Reason 3. And this is another reason that I absolutely hate, but in the spirit of self-accountability, I'm just going to be real about how it can affect you if this is something you're doing. Here goes. You're too picky. Just like knocked the wind out of me just even saying that, because I hate that so much. But I will say that sometimes people can be stuck to an image and like a laundry list of things they want in a person, and it has nothing to do with the actual compatibility of the person. I respect preferences. I think preferences are so important. But I do think as a people, we discount how much we've all been sold the same image of what the perfect person looks like and who they might be. You know, the girl next door. Oh, she looks very sweet. She this, or he's that, or they're this. And so in our minds, we've been sold this by the media, by movies, by romance novels, whatever. We've been sold this. And so when we think of our person, a lot of times it has to do with imagery that we're not even aware has affected us that much. Also, I think that your experiences with certain types of people can affect what your type is. So you may have only had experiences with certain types of people, and therefore your love mate can only be a certain type of person, which is why I think that preferences sometimes are tricky, because it's like, well, have you tried this? well, have you tried that? Now, when we talk about being too picky with me, I know they ain't talking to me, because if you guys could see the amount of people that I have taken a chance on. It's like I was casting for the United Nations production of The Bachelorette, because I literally mean like every race, every height, I have tried to take a chance. And, you know, for whatever reason, that has not brought me any great success. But I definitely, for me, I'm very aware that, like, okay, image wise, I'm haven't been super picky. Now I am really picky when it comes to what their plans are and what they're doing in their lives. And so with that, I just have to be honest, I don't feel that that's wrong. Because personally for me, I'm not saying like someone has to be a millionaire or whatever, but I've mentioned this before, want someone who could meet me halfway and who also has the same general ideas about standards of living as I do. And I just think that that's basic compatibility, and that's a good thing to have a healthy relationship. But I do think people have a point when they say you're being too picky when you're just focusing on superficial things, when you're focusing on maybe just a laundry list of requirements that come from your limited experience and exposure to people. Maybe you have a list of requirements and it stems from underlying xenophobia or racism. That happens all the time. Dating apps have put out a lot of data about how that happens a lot to people on dating apps. They maybe aren't swiped on as much because people have this image of who they're looking for when they go into an app, and the algorithm follows suit. And a lot of times it is repressed racism and xenophobia that informs those choices. And so, yeah, I do think that people can be too picky. But I think that in some ways, pickiness is necessary. And in other ways, it's like you might be better off if you expanded your horizons a little bit. All right, so this is another reason. And this one I actually do agree with. I agree with all of these. Like, I made the list. But this is another reason that I think people can contribute to their own single status. And that is you are trying too hard. So I think that sometimes we can overwhelm ourselves. We want this to happen so badly that we overwhelm ourselves. We overstimulate ourselves. We are on every dating app. And as a result, the ability to really, really gauge how good of a choice someone is sort of fades. I'm trying to think right now of a song lyric that I heard once by this singer. His name is Damian Rice, and I can't think about it. I cannot remember what it was, but it was along the lines of, you give a man a certain amount of choices, an indefinable amount of choices, and you're actually crippling him. And I think in some ways that's what people's issue is with the dating app situation, is it's you get so many choices that you don't give focus to one person or one anything. I also think when you're trying really, really hard, you can exhaust yourself and it can spoil the process for you. You can also, other people can tell you're trying really hard and you might scare them away. I know that has been my case before. I've really liked someone and whoops, I really wanted something to happen and they were not on that tip. And instead of being like, okay, cool, well, you have my number, text me, and then going home and being crazy, I was crazy to them. What do you mean? This is not, we're a match. Yeah, we don't talk. You know, because well, first of all, it wasn't my person, obviously. But also, I definitely came out a little too strong. But I will say that sometimes trying too hard can overstimulate you. It can exhaust you. And as a result, it can spoil the process, which can lead to you being single for longer. Okay. So that's the end of my list. This video is a lot shorter than the last one, just because, again, I don't want to come off as blamey, and I feel like single people get enough. We get enough people blaming us. While I think it's important to keep in mind how you could be adding to your status, I think you also have to think about how your behaviors are impacted by your experiences and your environment. Like, it's very what came first, the chicken or the egg. You can't have one without the other. I also want to say this, and this is how I'll end this little video and this little series. I recently did a podcast with a young woman named Shawnee Silver, and it's called A Single Serving. And when we first start off talking, she says, well, you know, I think we can postulate and come up with hypotheses about why we're single and why it's persisted for so long. But at the end of the day, I really do think it's because we haven't met our person. That's what I think it's about. And when you look at life, like, honestly, Ted Bundy had a girlfriend. your single status really, a lot of times people will say like, oh, well, you're not doing this, you're not doing this. And one of the things I hate hearing is someone saying, well, you're single because you don't love yourself. There's like this idea, this narrative that people push that in order to be with somebody else, you have to be this perfect thing. And it's just not true. A lot of times the coupling that happens between people depends on so many different societal factors and just timing and so many other things that really sitting back and being like, okay, this is why this is happening to me is a little unfair. Because at the end of the day, yeah, that's what it boils down to. You just haven't met your person yet. And there's a great book I found a couple years ago, and people who are big on accountability will hate the title of this book, and this book is called It's Not You. I love, love, love this book, especially if you're a person who has been single for several years and you're just like, man, I know I'm capable of making great friendships. I know I'm capable of making great relationships. I know I'm capable of doing a great job at my work, but like this romance thing, I haven't been able to figure it out. This author was a single woman up until the time she was like 43. And she talks about how she was unable to relate to her friends when she was like in her mid 30s, and she's still going home to her parents' house for holidays as basically a grown child, while they're posting pictures online of their babies, taking their kids to school and being in this new role in their life. And she was unable to relate, and she talks about how that made her feel. She goes through a lot of the different things that people say to single people, so probably some of the things that I included on this list, and she refutes every single one of them, not for the case of just wanting to be argumentative, but for providing a different perspective. And it basically all comes down to the same point that Shawnee made at the beginning of the podcast, which is you really can think about all the things in the world and all the reasons in the world and all the factors, but it comes down to you haven't met your person. And yes, there are things that you can do to better facilitate that, but at the end of the day, no matter what you do, if you go out and you take 1,000,000 classes, you lose 100 pounds, you become the best version possible of yourself, and you're still without a partner, it's just because you haven't met that person. And that's all there is to it. I think once we kind of accept that, I think a lot of the heaviness of not being partnered when you want to be, I think it's sort of, for me, it helps me hold it a little bit better. Like, you don't suck. You just haven't met your person. And hopefully it does the same for you. Thanks for watching.